Prescribing and taking antibiotics when they are not needed is creating antibiotic-resistant superbacteria. These superbacteria are then much more difficult to get rid of than regular bacteria. This is a global threat because common infections are becoming deadly. In this video, we will be discussing what antibiotics are and how they should be used, what antibiotic resistance is and how it occurs, what you can do to prevent it, and how to prevent more bacteria from becoming resistant, how the use of antibiotics in animals we eat can affect humans, and finally, the measures that the US government and healthcare workers are taking to avoid creating antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Antibiotics are a type of medication that is designed to target and kill bacteria. Some antibiotics can be used to treat many different types of bacteria, and other antibiotics are specialized and therefore they're only effective in killing certain bacteria. Bacteria are tiny living organisms. They're so small they can't be seen without a microscope. So basically, bacteria are a type of germ, as we would say in normal English instead of biology talk. So some bacteria are helpful to humans, like the kind that we have in our intestines and help us digest food, but other bacteria make us sick. Antibiotics are used to make us better when there are bad bacteria in our body. When there's bad bacteria or germs in our bodies, our immune system tries to fight them off. But sometimes your immune system isn't strong enough to fight the germs, so your doctor prescribes you antibiotics to help your immune system fight off the germs. Antibiotics save lives because if your body isn't strong enough to fight the germs will take over and they can kill you. It's important that antibiotics work on life-threatening infections because we have no other medical interventions to kill off the bacteria and save people's lives. The following animation shows how antibiotics work. The antibiotics target the bacterial cells in the body and kill them. The antibiotic is the large pill and the others are the bacteria. Now that you know what antibiotics and bacteria are, why antibiotics are important, and how antibiotics work, you might be wondering, when should we use antibiotics? There's two main types of germs that make us sick, bacteria and viruses. Antibiotics only work on bacteria. They don't work on viruses, so we can't take antibiotics to get rid of viruses. We can only take antibiotics if we have a bacterial infection that our body can't fight off by itself. If we use antibiotics when we don't need them, we can create bacteria that can't be killed with antibiotics. This is a problem because we don't have any other way to get rid of the bacteria if we don't have antibiotics. This animation shows what occurs when antibiotic resistance is happening. So the antibiotic kills off the bacteria just like normal. And then there's a couple of bacteria left, as you can see. And those bacteria are now not able to be killed by the antibiotic. So then the bacteria can reproduce and is immune to antibiotics. There are a few different ways that we can create antibiotic-resistant bacteria. A few of these, as shown in the picture on your screen now, are overprescribing antibiotics to begin with, not taking all of your antibiotics that are prescribed to you, overusing antibiotics in livestock, and lack of hygiene, and finally, a lack of research to develop new antibiotics. People who have a weak immune system and people who take antibiotics regularly are at a higher risk for developing a resistant infection, but anyone could potentially come down with a resistant bacterial infection. You can prevent the spread of antibiotic-resistant bacteria by asking your doctor questions like, about what type of illness they're diagnosing you with, and if it's really necessary to take antibiotics to cure it. And also by asking them to wash their hands when they walk into the room and before they touch you, so that if they've seen a patient with a resistant infection, they don't spread it to you. You can also wash your hands frequently. You should seek treatment early if you think you have an infection, or if you're not getting better from an infection, you're getting worse. You need to use your antibiotics as prescribed and only when they're medically necessary, which can be determined by your doctor. You should get vaccinated because vaccines protect us against common viruses. And you should prepare your food safely to avoid transferring bacteria from your food to your family. We'll get into more details about that later. Antibiotic resistance has been observed since the discovery of antibiotics by Alexander Fleming. We have always known that antibiotic resistance could potentially become a problem. We've just always thought that if we used antibiotics responsibly and did not overuse them, we wouldn't see this for a very long time. Just like humans, animals have good and bad bacteria in their body at all times. People can become infected from their food by eating raw or undercooked meat, produce, and seafood that's been contaminated with resistant germs, or from contact with an animal's poop. This contact can occur by directly touching the poop, or when the poop has contaminated water for drinking, swimming, or growing crops. Another way that people can become infected is from touching animals without proper hand washing. Animals can develop antibiotic-resistant infections just like humans. When food animals are slaughtered and processed, any resistant bacteria in the animal gut can contaminate the meat. If people eat contaminated meat, they can also become sick. Resistant germs in the animal gut can also be in animal manure, which allows the bacteria to contaminate water and soil. If contaminated manure or water is used on fruit, vegetables, and other produce, the resistant genes can also contaminate those foods. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, has approved the use of antibiotics in food animals to treat disease in sick animals, control the spread of disease in a group when some animals are sick and some are healthy, and to prevent disease in animals that are at risk for becoming sick. In the past, animals were given antibiotics for growth promotion and increased feed efficiency. Farmers would give animals antibiotics in their feed so that they would grow bigger and get full from eating less. This caused the good bacteria in the gut of the livestock to become resistant. As of 2017, antibiotics are not allowed to be used in the U.S. for growth promotion or feed efficiency because they're medically necessary for human health. If we're only allowed to use antibiotics in animals that are sick, then why do the meats in the grocery store say that they're antibiotic-free? It turns out that these antibiotic-free labels that you might see are not approved or regulated by the USDA. So this means that they don't really have a clear meaning. We just learned that there are certain reasons antibiotics can and can't be used in animals. These rules and regulations make it so none of the food we eat has antibiotics in it. Any meat could have bacteria or antibiotic-resistant bacteria on it from the slaughtering process, but there should not be any antibiotics in the actual meat. Now, you might be wondering what we're doing to prevent bacteria from becoming antibiotic resistant in the first place. So as previously stated, the USDA and the FDA have put strict regulations on the uses of antibiotics in the animals that we eat, and the CDC is also working to educate healthcare providers and patients on the risks associated with the overuse of antibiotics and the development of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. The federal government has also issued a national action plan and a national strategy for combating antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So this makes it so that multiple government agencies are working together to prevent antibiotic resistance from occurring to a further extent. It's important that we combat this problem globally, because when people travel, they could get sick with antibiotic-resistant bacterial infections, and then when they get home, they could spread those infections to other Americans, which would cause an outbreak. If an antibacterial resistant outbreak occurs, all Americans are at risk for developing an antibiotic-resistant bacterial infection, and we won't have any way to treat this infection. To summarize everything that we've discussed in this video, antibiotics are our only way to kill bacteria. By using antibiotics when we don't need them, we can create resistant bacteria. Antibiotic-resistant bacterial infections are currently untreatable. We are regulating the use of antibiotics in livestock in an attempt to limit the number of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and federal agencies are working together to try to educate healthcare providers and the general public on the dangers of antibiotic-resistant bacterial infections.